On this week's Not the Top 20 podcast, Championship and FA Cup recap. Who's that all-conquering Cardiff City leader? It's Omar Reza, a modern-day footballing Julius Caesar. We've got a brutish Leeds United win. Watford have 60 vibes, and Michael Carrick's fear of Robins continues. Gather round for first-round FA Cup stories, a fair few upsets, a managerial sacking, and Nile Ranger. I'm Ali Maxwell. He's George Elek. Hey, mate.
Hi, mate.
All good?
Yes.
Great. Sheffield Wednesday lost 6-2 at home to Watford, and it is a pretty lively one to talk about for a number of reasons. I mean, 1-1 at half-time, and Adam Drury, who's a Watford fan on NTT20 squad, when recapping this game on the squad on Saturday night, such a weird game, he said. Wasn't going anywhere at half-time, with Wednesday probably the better side, and getting at our back four easily. We scored 2 penalties, growing confidence, and have a ball for the last half hour. One of those freak ones that happens once or twice a season where it all seems to go your way and you feel like you could score with every attack. Of all the away ends to be in over the weekend, Watford's up at Hillsborough, probably number one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a team who have amassed a lot of points this season, but mainly at home, who've really struggled away from home for the most part. We're on a long losing streak away from home, and you have to go back to the first game of the season where they beat Millwall 3-2 in a game that wasn't that dissimilar to this, where, you know, it wasn't necessarily a case where Watford went and blew the other team away. It was an end-to-end game where Watford took their chances. But I mean, in this occasion, if you're a Watford fan, you can't really believe what you're seeing in a positive way. If you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan, you can't believe what you're seeing in the most negative way, where I think the individual performances of pretty much the whole defensive unit, but in particular Deshaun Bernard and Dominic Iorfa and James Beadle in goal were all really poor. You're looking at the first goal from Porteous, which is, Bar does well to get to get the ball in, but I think Beadle has to be doing better with the shot. You look at the ridiculous handball and the foul on Bayo and the clipped ball over the top, which just caused absolute carnage to the Wednesday back line. They were both quite clearly penalties and correctly given. And the way that they were able to pick them off late on too, it was just a catastrophe. And it's funny with Wednesday, because normally when you see a performance like this, it comes off the back of a poor run of results. Normally the fingers are all pointed at the manager, but Danny Ryle is correctly held in such high regard. This is quite an interesting, it kind of incorporates what I wrote about on NTT20.com last week, where I think more often it should be accounted for that managers go through tough periods and teams aren't always on an upward curve. And on Wednesday, I think that, for once, off the back of a 6-2 home defeat, fans are willing to look for reasons why this has happened beyond just saying the manager's clueless and got it tactically wrong. I think the injury to Famwa in last weekend has made a big impact in terms of their defensive shape. I think Watford were obviously very clinical. And I should say, I had a kind of back and forth with somebody on Twitter called Sydney Balmoral James, which I don't think is the
great name.
The man. Well, I mean, the original Sydney James was part of the Carry On series and died in 1976. I don't think it's actually him. I think it's an homage.
Well, he lives on.
An homage to him.
He lives on via a Watford fan on Twitter.
But we had a back and forth in the summer about me not being particularly encouraged by Tom Cleverley in Watford, and he kind of understandably got back in touch and said, "How are you feeling about this?" And I initially said, "Well, jury's still out. Like, I'm still not sold on Watford. I don't think they're necessarily going to be able to keep this up." But then I kind of went back and thought that's unbelievably harsh on Tom Cleverley to not give him due credit for the start to the season, because yes, you and I had them 24th in our 1-24s, and that raised some eyebrows. But at the same time, there are a lot of Watford fans who are pretty concerned about the lack of quality within the club, about the lack of investment into the playing side of things from the Pozzo family. And it wasn't as ridiculous as it now looks to consider them as being a relegation candidate. So even if things do spiral from here, and even if they aren't able to maintain a level of form that's going to see them challenge for the top 6, I still think for Cleverley to have come in what is his first full season, taken a group who we anticipated would really struggle, and managed to get them into what is a really effective attacking force. Like, I still do worry about the quality of chances they give up on a consistent basis, and that all their games seem to just descend into kind of basketball style chaos. But so long as they're going to be this threatening from an attacking standpoint, without Vacuum Bayo scores 4 goals on Saturday, yet you won't find many Watford fans who necessarily want him to be their starting striker going forward. Like, he's someone who I think has proven over time that, as as good as the finish was for his hat-trick goal, which wasn't even as good as the assist from Festi Ebasele, where 10 seconds before the ball's in the back of the net, he's facing his own goal, facing the right-hand corner flag, and he does a spin and an amazing ball through to Bayo. I think Cleverley has to be given immense credit for taking what looked like not a particularly good side and turning them into this very fun and very effective team right now.
Yeah, fun. I'm glad you mentioned that word. That's the crux of my analysis of this game and this Watford side. And I'm glad you took on the elephant in the room, our 24th place prediction of this team that are sitting in the top six a quarter of the season in. We did have someone tweet us saying, surely you can't have ever picked a team to finish 24th before and then they end up in the playoffs. Mate, Crawley down 23-24.
Always happens.
Got promoted.
If anything, it's consistent.
Yeah, you're giving us too much credit there. We're actually quite consistently making exceptionally bad predictions. And it's probably convenient for me to say this, but I'm not interested in thinking about that prediction every time something happens with this Watford team, because I want to go completely the other way and just enjoy the roller coaster of vibes that is this Watford team. I think if any EFL team currently merits use of the phrase pure vibes FC, it's surely Watford right now. This is a team that just won 6-2 away from home, having lost 5 straight away. This is a team that have lost by 3 goals 3 times already this season in just over a dozen games and are still in the top 6. This is a team who have scored the 3rd most goals in the division and conceded the 4th most goals in the division. They are bottom 3 for non-penalty XG against. Your concerns about the defensive side of the game have to be valid. And then there's the fact you've got a rookie manager and a popular former player, Tom Cleverley, helming it all, handling what is generally thought to be quite chaotic off-field setup and harnessing whatever he can to turn this team into a really fun team. And the squad is perfect for, or to be called, pure vibes, right? We've got Quadwo Bar, ball-carrying whirlwind. We've got Festi Ebasele, still only 22, fresh from 2 years out in Udinese, why not? And now looking really good. The Cruyff turn that he chucked in before his ball through for Bayo.
It's unbelievable. That assist is just...
It was so unnecessary, and that's why we love it. It was basically showboating from right back, because he could just pass it back to the keeper. He could pass it square to the centre-back. He waits to be closed down in order to throw in a Cruyff turn, and then a perfect through ball. You've got Chak Vatadze, who's so fun to watch with his socks rolled down, with his massive calves, and players just bounce off him. You can't knock him off the ball. They've got this, as you alluded to, this crazy issue up front where it seems basically whoever starts up front for Watford plays terribly, is basically cursed. Bayo breaking the curse here with 4 goals. But let's be clear, this is one of the funniest 4-goal hauls we've probably ever talked about on the pod. This is a guy that had 1 goal this season from 3.1 expected pre-game. They got to about an hour in. He gets given a penalty in order to get a freebie goal. But only once Tom Ince has taken the first penalty that they win in this game to make sure that they definitely score the penalty.
And Ince was standing by the penalty spot as well, waiting.
Ince had not been subbed off. This wasn't a case of Bayo being the second choice. It was just, let's give Vakun a goal, and then grabs 3 more as they extend their lead to 6-2. It's all so fun. They've got, on top of that, 35-year-old Musa Sissoko, 36-year-old Angelo Ogbonna. Why not? An array of nationalities in their team, 11 different nationalities in their 13 most used players. They are basically the most fun team in the Championship right now, and any neutrals listening should be keeping a close eye on this Watford side, whatever happens from here, because it is not mad to suggest that having a team that finds attacking really fun and really ideally could do without the defensive side of the game, ideally. It's not always a way of playing that is entirely sustainable for picking up a level of points that would keep you up in a top 6, but that's where they are right now.
I also, there is almost the most impressive thing from my mind about what Cleverley's doing in Watford is that if you look at their games so far this season, it's only Luton, and we know that Luton game, you can kind of set it apart because of the rivalry aspect to it. It was Sheffield United, who are the second best defensive team in the league behind Leeds, and Preston North End. They're the only 3 teams that have kept Watford at bay so far this season. And it kind of feels to me like they're a team who, because of their ridiculous attacking intent, no matter who you are playing against them, they will kind of bring you up or down, however you want to see it, to their level. Like, they will ensure that your game plan goes out the window because they are going to allow you the space to get in behind if you want to. But, you will have to deal with a pretty relentless attacking threat. And the Tom Cleverley's Watford that we saw at the back end of last season did not give me that impression whatsoever. So I think we should celebrate that we've got a guy here who had a great playing career, who is a young English manager who seemingly has a ridiculously attacking ideology and is implementing it effectively. That is a pretty good start in my mind. So all credit to him. As I say, I'm not convinced that Watford will finish in the top 6. In fact, I'm pretty confident that they won't. And I think there will probably be more games this season where they are beaten, as they were by Norwich 4-1, by Preston 3-0, by Luton 3-0, because of the way that they play. It's just a case of, on the day, who's more clinical. And on Saturday, unquestionably, it was Watford.
Watford play host to Oxford United on Friday night. George Elek will be in attendance, so Watford fans, look out for him. Leeds 3, Plymouth 0. Hard really to know where to start with this one. George, Leeds scored 3 goals in an 8-minute spell from the 30th minute to the 40th minute. They went from 0-0 to 3-0. We had a remarkable toe punt from outside the box from Dan
James. One of the weirdest goals I think I've ever seen.
We had Joel Perreault benefiting, as he has done recently, from a good opportunity and finishing well for 2-0. We had Brendan Aronson making it 3-0. And then we had a really comfortable second half. Plymouth didn't have a shot in the whole game. And I think we're probably going to pull harder on that thread. But one thing I wanted to flag up, which you mentioned before the game, the betting odds for this game, looking at what the bookmakers think about teams is something that often informs the way that we analyse EFL clubs. It's not for everyone, but we think there's value in working out what is informing betting odds. And Leeds for this game, a league fixture, let's remember, were a shorter price to beat Argyle than any of the FA Cup fixtures in the first round, 40 of them. And that included games like Chesterfield against Horsham, 3 leagues between them. That was the shortest odds, about the same as Leeds against Argyle, to be fair, but certainly not shorter than that. So in the bookies' eyes, Leeds were more likely to beat Argyle in the Championship than Stevenage were to beat Guiseley, 4 leagues below them, than Northampton were to beat Kettering, 4 leagues below them. And let's be clear, neither of those teams won in 90 minutes. Bristol Rovers to beat Western-super-Mare, team that 3 leagues below them. And the bookies were right? This was a league game that was more one-sided than any of the FA Cup games. Plymouth didn't muster a shot. Johnny Cooper, who works for Opta, tweeting, Plymouth Argyle yesterday, just the second team Opta has on record since 2013-14 to fail to attempt a shot in a championship game. Because we like making sure we know all the stats, I can tell you the other team was Millwall away at Blackburn, March 2022. What does all this say about Leeds 3, Plymouth 0? Where to start, basically?
I think, just taking your point about the odds, like for those who don't pay attention to odds, and understandably so, it's important to make the differential that this isn't, the odds aren't set by bookmakers. This isn't a case where someone is sitting in an office at AK Bets or any other major bookmaker in the UK and thinking, right, what price do we make Leeds? I think they're 1 to 5, and they put 1 to 5 down. Markets are dictated by money. It's like any commodity market, like it's dictated by where the willingness to basically buy and sell sits. And wherever there's a lot of money queuing to buy and a lot of money queuing to sell, that is where the line is hit. So that's why odds are important with this kind of stuff, is because it's a pretty accurate reflection when the first ball is kicked about the strength of both of those sides, because you've got loads of money queuing up on either side telling you how good the weight of the world think that this is, especially when you consider you've got massive betting syndicates, the likes of Tony Bloom, and his wealth will be informing those markets. So the fact that Leeds was so short, what price did they go off? Kind of
it was about 1.15.
1.15. So that is unbelievably short for a league game. That tells us a couple of things. What could tell us a couple of things. Either that is a damning indictment of Plymouth Argyle. Obviously their away form this season has been incredibly bad, and that'll be factored in. But for them to go off that price in a league game, and we had quite a lot of people comment on our betting show, being like, "That is ridiculous. No team should ever be that big a price in a league game in the EFL." I think Saturday proved that just isn't the case, because of the dominance of Leeds, or it's telling us that Leeds are perceived to be incredibly strong. You have to wonder if, for example,
I feel like you're saying "or" when you could have said "and" there. It's probably both.
Or either or.
For it to be that short, surely there has to be both at play, because they feed into the same thing.
For sure. But what you have to consider is if Everton, for example, hosted Plymouth Argyle at home, would they be the same price? What price would they be? I think there's a fair price. There's a fair chance there'd be a bigger price than Leeds. Wow. In which case, maybe the market is saying that Leeds are currently perceived as being a mid-table or bottom half, but mid-table Premier League side. And if that's the case, then there's an issue here for the rest of the Championship. Like, it was interesting to note, and I said this on our WhatsApp group on Saturday. I was writing a preview piece for Millwall Burnley, and I went back to check how Burnley were getting on this season compared to 22-23 when they won the league, and I noticed that this season, before the weekend, Burnley had picked up 4 more points than Burnley had done under Vincent Kompany early in that season. That season, Burnley went on to win the league with 101 points, 10 points clear of anyone else. And I think at this, in November, when we start looking at the league table, when we start thinking it's taking shape, it's easy to think that because they haven't started that well, we're not going to see a level of dominance that we did before. But there are so many points still on offer that actually, if a team are going to hit that heights, as we saw from Leeds in the second half of last season, as we saw from Burnley prior to that, as we saw from Leicester, as we've kind of seen from Sunderland at the beginning of this season, they rack up points very, very quickly. And this, to me, was an example of a team who are just so good in terms of completely dominating games. Like, yes, Argyle didn't offer much by way of riposte. And when you look at the passing stats, even though Leeds were 3-0 up in this game after 38 minutes, only 32 passes in the opposition half from Argyle in the whole game. So that's despite spending well over a half behind by 3 goals. This is a ridiculous level of control. And it also comes back to the fact that, as we spoke about when it happened, Rothwell and Tanaka are a brilliant Championship midfield pair, where their combination of their passing and control and Rothwell's ability to break lines with his running and their energy, it fits incredibly nicely. And it was good to see, I'm going to try and say his name, Galavogi, come off the bench and look really good. And Leeds fans are very impressed by what they saw from him as well. So they're no longer really struggling for depth in central midfield. As I keep saying every Monday, and I know it's boring and I know people don't like to hear it, I just think this Leeds side are so far clear of the rest.
And then how do you look at it from an Argyle point of view? Hugh wrote about this on Weekend Notes this morning. He also basically requested that this be a discussion point on the pod, saying he wanted to ask a question, even allowing for the important caveat. So there are 2 teams in a football game, and you've just talked about Leeds' strength and that it'll be the toughest fixture that they play this season. Is this, from Plymouth, a contender for the worst performance in 8 years of NTT20? I guess, how strongly will you point the finger at Argyle and by extension their manager Wayne Rooney for another away performance that has barely made an impact on the opposition, which is a continuation of a worrying trend? And how much are you doing the thing that we sometimes say, which is this probably, even without having a shot in the game, which is obviously a headline stat, this probably isn't the match to use as reason to say Argyle are a disaster and Rooney's a disaster?
Definitely that. I mean, Sheffield United only had 5 shots at Leeds a couple of weeks ago. None of them were on target. Even when Burnley beat Leeds 1-0, they only had 7 shots, had none after half an hour. Like, Leeds are doing this to teams fairly consistently, and given that Argyle are quite obviously a lot weaker than Burnley and Sheffield United, it's not a massive surprise to me that they weren't able to, well, we kind of called it on the betting show, didn't we? Like, that this might happen. I personally would say that Argyle's performance on opening day against Sheffield Wednesday was worse than this, because that was the gap between the 2 teams was just as pronounced. And even though they offered maybe a little bit more from an attacking threat perspective, the consistency with which a Wednesday sit team who haven't had a particularly good season since that day were able to carve through them was more concerning. So, as I often say, I have no idea why a team like Plymouth Argyle are able to be a pretty good, like an okay side at home, and be, right now away from home. If this team play the way they do away from home consistently in League One, I don't think they'll be anywhere near the top end of the table. Like, they're currently putting in performances that are unable to touch Championship sides on the road. Yeah,
it's a problem. 16 goals conceded, 1 goal scored away from home. That was Whittaker from range against QPR out of nothing. A lot made of their home form, kind of mitigating this, but their home form is the 8th best in the league per points per game at home so far this season. So if you're more or less writing off all of your away games and leaning on your home form to get you to 46, 50 points, then you're actually going to need probably more than the 1.833 points per game that they're getting at the moment at home to keep them up. Perhaps not, actually. That probably would be enough to keep them up because they're not going to get 0 points away from home. Or are they? It's a massive couple of weeks for Rooney and for Argyle, in order to keep their heads while all around them are losing theirs and blaming it on you, to put it in the way that Mr. Kipling liked to do so.
What's your favourite Mr. Kipling?
Probably Bakewell tart.
That's the only one I can think of.
If Portsmouth and Derby away for Argyle next up, and then Watford at home after international break. So I think, to leave behind this discussion, I would say that on the pod on the 25th of November, I think there's a chance we're talking about the first game under a new manager. Or they'll have picked up between 4 and 8 points, and if that's the case, they'll still be in a pretty big seeded batch of teams between 13th and 21st. And if they're not in the relegation zone, I think there'll be people who say, how can you possibly be panicking if we're not in the relegation zone, which has had to be the only objective, is to stay up again this season. So, interesting. 3-0 to Leeds, and lots to talk about off the back of it. What about Blackburn? 0, Sheff United 2 early on Saturday. Well, very impressive away performance from United. They've been excellent at home this season, as discussed, and Blackburn themselves have been so good at home this season that it looked like a difficult proposition for them, but possibly their best performance of the season, I think, probably from a Blades point of view. Everything looking pretty slick, pretty strong from the defensive strength that they're getting from a back four or back five, if you count the excellent keeper Cooper. They've got Gilchrist, they've got Suter, Robinson and Burrows looking really good as a back four. Burrows getting forward as he did so well for Posh last season to score a great goal to put them ahead. Then Vinny Souza just in front of the back four. With that spine to the team, they just look so consistent when it comes to being able to defend in their defensive half, that they're keeping a ton of clean sheets, 0s and 1s, a crucial foundation for any strong team. They didn't face any shots on target here from Blackburn, who did have one in particular big chance through Ryan Hedges that he put wide. But going forward, they look to me like they're signs of improvement. Kiefer Moore was excellent here. Raksaki has such quality that if you do get the ball to him 1v1 with a fullback, you can be very confident that he's going to get a cross in at the byline or come inside and get a shot off. So really, really hard to defend against. Callum O'Hare, I think there's a sense that he probably hasn't necessarily lit things up going forward as much as people might have expected. He's got a big reputation at this level, was one of the big summer moves. But even so, in this game, what did we see? Tracking back, winning the ball back, starting an attack that ended up with one of their goals. And then you've got the fourth attacker at the moment, which is either Rhian Brewster or Tyrese Campbell. It's quite interesting to me that they're kind of playing this second striker role, these two players. For Brewster, it seems a little bit of an awkward fit for me. He's not playing as like an old school on the last line with a target man in Kiefer Moore. Is actually a bit more withdrawn. I think he's still finding his feet in that role. I think it might suit Tyrese Campbell a little bit better. I think he might be a better player in terms of linking up with teammates, and I certainly think he's a more dependable finisher at this stage, as we saw with the second goal. So yeah, Blades feeling pretty strong after that performance, I must say. Substack Sam, who's a Sheff United fan, said, this Blades team is the most finished second in the Championship team I've ever seen, even if we finish 10th. And I kind of see what he means. In that if you take out last season where we just had 4 incredible teams, very rare, basically an aberration of a season in the Championship. This season feels more in line with like a standard Championship season. And sometimes that second place team that goes up, they don't always provide fireworks, but they just get the job done in an unfussy
Sheffield United, 22-23.
There you go. Tell me about Middlesbrough 0, Coventry 3. This one was a big game on paper, pre-weekend. It was the 6th meeting between these two sides under the management of Mark Robbins and Michael Carrick. And Coventry win again. Back-to-back wins for them and their first away win of the league season. Yeah,
it's hard to really... If you are a Middlesbrough fan and you go back in time to watching Tommy Conway standing over a penalty, having beaten Sheff United 1-0, 3-1 up against Carrow Road, to go from that moment to conceding 5 unanswered goals is but another episode of Borough just shooting themselves in the foot, where they cannot seem able to just get themselves on a run that their performances maybe deserve, but they didn't on this occasion. I mean, it was a game where not much happened in the first half an hour or so, beyond Hayden Hackney showing his inexperience and getting 2 pretty stupid yellow cards and getting sent off relatively early. And from then on, it was always going to be difficult, to be sent off after 22 minutes for 2 yellows, the first of which was just a really, absolutely no intent to play the ball whatsoever, just a really stupid kick out. He's someone who's getting booked too often at the moment. Obviously such a good ball player, a player that we like a lot, but he's landed his team in it, to be honest. And from then on, Coventry saw out the game really impressively. They had the ball in the back of the net twice. Both of them were disallowed in the first half before Bobby Thomas scored the opener. Hadji Wright got the second, and then Eccles made the point safe late on. It was pretty convincing from 11v10 from Coventry's perspective. Interesting to see that Ephraim Mason-Clark came on and looked very good on the left-hand side, where we haven't really seen him play so much this season, that we spoke about on Football Corner a couple of weeks ago with Hadji Wright through the middle. It looked to me like it worked pretty well. We've seen Coventry switch from the back four that we saw them employ for the start of the season back to the three at the back that we saw for the most part in the last campaign, and that's yielded 2 wins against Luton and against Borough. Again, from a Coventry perspective, go back in time to win a 2-0 down against Luton, and then you score 6 unanswered goals to win those 2 games 3-2 and 3-0. So
football.
Well, it's huge. For Mark Robins and Coventry, things, if they'd lost that game against Luton 2-0, things would have looked very, very awkward. And I think questions would have been asked about how long they are happy to retain the faith in a manager that's taken them so far. But 2 wins, they're up in 13th now. They're only 6 points off the playoffs, having beaten 2 decent sides. And the manner of that win last weekend is impressive. So yeah, the switch to the back three seems to have worked.
What do we think about Jack Redoni playing left wing back?
I know. Well, it was Redoni and then it was Mason Clark.
Kind of
fine.
Kind of see it.
Yeah.
Kind of like it.
Better than who was it that played there? It was Kettering who played there against. So I prefer it to that.
Yeah.
Well, interesting that they play Kettering there in a home game, and then they start Redoni out on the away game.
Kettering, I maintain, is one of those guys who, the shape of him, the look of him, makes the idea of him playing left wing back absurd. But I actually think he's one of those guys who is probably at his best when he's just charging forward. He's in the wrong body almost in a way. I don't hate Redoni out there, and I do think in terms of the formatting of their midfield, it hasn't quite worked this season. But now with Sheff and Eccles and Victor Torp in front, sadly for Redoni, that's probably looking better than any midfield setup that he's been a part of so far. So, yeah, interesting. I think I couldn't help but think when Hayden Hackney, when I saw both of his cards, think about the fact that a month ago we're praising him and particularly noting what seems to be his physical development and how much bigger and stronger and how he's able to be a bit more tenacious as a ball-winning midfielder. Maybe flying in a bit too much now. The stat that was on Weekend Notes is that he's been booked in the first half 5 times in the last 7 games. Against Stoke, against Watford, against Bristol City, and twice here, booked in the first half of a game. You can't do that. You really can't do that. 2 disallowed goals at 0-0, though, for Coventry. So if you think that the game changed and swung on that red card, that would be false. I think Coventry were making the running already at that point. Eccles involved with an assist and a goal. Obviously, Hadji Wright with a goal and an assist as well. And so much focus on Hadji Wright this season. Not all positive, I think it's fair to say. And here we are with him, 3rd top scorer in the league. Eccles having a good game as well. Great win for Coventry. Preston 1, Bristol City 3. They've had some great away days recently, Bristol Rovers. Come from behind, 2-0 down at Stoke to draw 2-2, playing really well. Came from behind to draw at Swansea. They beat Borough, and now this 3-1 win at Preston gifted the opener. Hirakawa chasing a bouncing ball. Freddie Woodman catching the ball, and as he caught it, Hirakawa's hand knocked it out of his hand, and he just ran it into the goal and looked pretty embarrassed about it, to be quite honest with you. There was one particularly sheepish look at the referee, and then a kind of all right, well, I guess if you're going to give it.
He's done very well the speed of movement of his hand is very impressive, where it seems to just emerge out of nowhere, then return back to where it came. But yes, if I was a North End fan, I'd feel pretty aggrieved that was given.
Yeah, and they didn't have another shot in the first half, Bristol City, so it wasn't like they were flying out the traps.
Only 5 shots in total.
They did have 2 injuries in the first half, Williams and Tanner coming off, so there was quite a lot of jigging around of the system that Manning had to do. They then got level, Preston through a Sam Greenwood free kick, and City's response was brilliant after that, to be honest. Mark Sykes with an incredible run down the right, and
an
an excellent cross for Nahki Wells to head home, which just made me think how good a footballer Sykes would have been like before the inverting of wingers in sort of 2010. Like if he played in the 80s and 90s.
Go and get paint on your boots.
Premier League player for sure. And shout out Nahki Wells, by the way, because I was excited about the summer signings of Fally Mayulu and of Sinclair Armstrong, but Wells has fought them off. Basically, he's fought off these young and exciting and speedy, flashy summer signings. He has started the last 4, and he might not be flashy or exciting, but he has played over 25,000 championship minutes in his career. He has logged a pretty respectable 0.48 goals and assists per 90 in that time. He is just dependable, and clearly right now, that is what Manning wants at the top of the pitch. And the third goal was just a joyous icing of the cake for a brilliant away day for the fans. Bird had already had a precursor, McGuane into Hirakawa, into Bird, and he shot just wide. Not long after, McGuane into Bird, into Hirakawa, little back heel, into Bird, boom, brilliant finish, great goal, great scenes. And for Bristol City's sneaky little 8-game unbeaten run now, they've only lost twice this season. They were back-to-back 3-0 defeats at Derby, at Blackburn, where there was a lot of unhappiness after those games, but albeit only 3 wins, 5 draws, it's not the winningest unbeaten streak, shall we say. I think there's quite a lot to be impressed with recently when it comes to the performances and just the general level of competitiveness and Manning's coaching, I think, is coming to the fore. Oxford 1, Swansea 2.
Yeah, tough scene for my lot. Swansea were very, very good for the first half an hour, and from an Oxford perspective, it was pretty galling to see how unable to get any kind of foothold in the game we were. Like Swansea controlling possession, but not stale, boring possession. And they didn't look like a team who hadn't scored in however many games it was. And they missed a couple of chances before Vipotnik scored the opener. It was only after that, and Oxford hadn't had a shot in that first 38 minutes, and it never really looked like getting anywhere near having a shot, to be honest. Swansea playing a very high line, Oxford with injuries to so many wingers, Carl Edwards, Siriki Dembele, Shemi Placheta, Matt Phillips, all guys who I think would have really helped Oxford play on the break. But as it is right now, you've got Tyler Goodrum and Owen Dale playing on the wings, 2 players with qualities but not with much pace, and therefore Swansea found it very, very easy to play a high line and to stop Oxford from getting in behind, with Mark Harris cutting a pretty isolated figure up top. The game changed on the goal, as it often does, with Oxford then kind of getting more of a foothold into it as Swansea kind of retreated a little bit and had some opportunities to get back in the game. Ruben Rodriguez hit the bar with a glancing header from a corner, and then after the break, Mark Harris, as he has a bit of a tendency to do when he's on a lean run, which he's on that right now, missing an absolute sitter just after half-time to make it 1-1. But then after that, Swansea were back in the ascendancy again, and Vipotnik had another chance to make it 2-0 before Bianchini got a deserved goal to make it 2-1 to Swansea. What happened then was interesting though, because Oxford came back into it. I'd kind of given up to an extent, but Dane Scarlett scored with a really nicely taken goal. That's his 3rd for the season. I'm liking what I'm seeing from him, and I hope he starts on Tuesday night against Hull. And then Oxford probably should have got a point, because Greg Lee, with something of a free header, someone who probably, if you could choose any Oxford player to be the recipient of this chance, it would be Lee, given how many goals he scores with his head. But he nodded it wide of the target. So a very weird game where Swansea, by far the better team in possession and deserving of their win, but definite concerns in my mind how a very poor Oxford side were able to create some pretty good chances against them, despite having very, very little of the ball in their final third. But yeah, it would have been a fortunate point for Oxford, and Des Buckingham pulled no punches whatsoever after the game. He was not happy. He wasn't dressing it up. He said that if his team are going to lose games, they're not going to lose them that way. But yeah, for Swansea, this was probably a result that they've deserved, because they were nowhere near. They haven't been anywhere near as bad as the bare results had suggested.
Yes, which you said on the recording of last week's pod, and I had to edit it out for. I had to chop out about 10 minutes of the recording to get the pod down, and that bit went. So we talked about how Swansea hadn't scored for ages.
Can you drop it in now?
And then you did a whole bit about how, like, realistically, they've actually created tons of chances in that time, and it's not really Luke Williams' fault that his strikers can't hit a barn door, and they'll probably start scoring goals soon. And actually, I'm a bit worried that Oxford are playing them next, because they'll probably start reaping what they're sowing.
Did you?
And no one heard it.
Did you do that to protect our esteemed colleague Hugh, who'd written that morning weekend notes. He was really worried about Swansea.
No comment at this time. Cardiff beat Norwich 2-1. The Omar Reza revolution continues, and it's way more fun than the Errol Belution. I can tell you that. Each of their games should be televised, I reckon. 2-1 win, and 1-0 to Norwich with 5 minutes to go. I think Norwich fans will be wondering how on earth they didn't win this game, because for 70 minutes they were the better side, at times miles the better side, probably. Borja Sainz scoring from miles outside the box. Me having said, he's not just a long-range shot merchant. He's not just scoring from range. Like, this guy's got a bit of everything. And he went, yeah, but I also can spank them in from 30 yards, and I will do that. And that's what he did. There was an amazing goal line clearance from Gutas that kept the score at 1-0, and then, with only 5 minutes or so to go, O'Dowda found Callum Robinson off the bench to finish, and he ran and he grabbed the ball. And that was a small thing, but I love that intent. It didn't cross anyone's mind that they would celebrate what was almost an against the run of play equaliser. For Robinson, it was like, hold on, we're Cardiff City under Omar Reza. We go for the win. And they did. They got it. Callum O'Dowda with a brilliant strike. Some of the best home limbs I've seen this season.
He loves it.
He loves it.
Do you remember Ipswich last season?
No, yes.
Yeah, he scored. Remember, he scored. They came back from, was it 2-0 down? 1-3-2?
He loves it. And look, for Norwich, I think it's fair to flag up that they are missing Angus Gunn, not just their first choice goalkeeper, but someone I think that has quite a lot. Well, it's just a much better goalkeeper than the goalkeeper they have playing in goal at the moment, I'm afraid. Marcelo Nunez is out. Kenny McLean was suspended. Josh Sargent was unavailable here. Ben Slimane, Onel Hernandez, Liam Gibbs, Ashley Barnes. There's at least 4 starters, if not 5, unavailable, and they still, I think, played pretty well. So I'm not too down on Norwich here. But let's just touch on Cardiff and Omar Reza. The love story continues. 7 games he's been in charge since Errol Bullock was sacked. 14 points in that time. The BBC reported before the game that Chairman Mehmet Dalman will join Chief Executive Ken Chu before the encounter with Norwich City, and they'll hold discussions with Reza. They must have been impacted by the result, by the support of the fans behind this team right now. The players clearly love him. Ben Anik, the goalkeeper, saying playing under him is probably the most confident I've ever felt. Man management, the way he talks to players on and off the field, for me, he's been brilliant. I don't think Omar's getting enough credit. He's been amazing. George, this is one of the most impressive interim manager spells that I can remember, and I don't think it's just the results. Let's hit the FOTMob corner button. How do you analyse and explain Omar Reza's impact, and when is a simple new manager bounce more like new manager, very good manager?
Yeah, it's always hard to know how much to credit a new manager with a turnaround of form over a very short period of time. With Cardiff, it's rare that you see one as obvious and pronounced as this, where the first game that Omar Reza took over was a 4-1 defeat against Hull. Since then, they have won 4 games and drawn 2, so 6 games unbeaten, coming off the back of a hellish start to the season. It is night and day in terms of what happened under Errol Bullock and under Omar Reza. Now, is there an element of variance within this? Let's have a look and see within the games themselves. And I'm going to focus on the last 3 wins. The 5-0 win at home to Plymouth was the first time that we had to kind of sit up and think, hold on, this was a very, very different performance to what we'd seen previously. 2.49 expected goals for those 5 goals. 25 shots, 11 on target. We hadn't seen anything like that under Errol Bullock. However, Plymouth were down to 10 men at 2-0. Mm-hmm. So I think and also, as we've discussed earlier on the pod, Plymouth Argyle, away from home, probably not a championship team. So I think with that one, you can probably say that could have happened under anyone. Credit to Rita for making it happen, but you want to see more. I almost think the 2-0 win over Pompey that came next was the most impressive. Again, Pompey, a team who have really struggled this season, so you've got to factor in the opposition. But 2.72 expected goals for their 2, 24 shots, 10 on target. And a matter of a couple of games, in two games against, albeit 2 of the weaker teams in the league, as evidence shows at the moment, they had 21 shots on target. That is pretty exciting. And then the game on the weekend. Now, this is the outlier. This is the one that looks different to the others. This is one where they won the game 2-1. But when you look at the way the game fell, 1.73 XG for Norwich, 0.64 to Cardiff, 11 shots to 16 against them. But I just don't think it really matters. I think this is an occasion where they've come up against a Norwich team who were very good. They've conceded a long-range strike. Norwich have missed a few opportunities. But you're going to have games where you're going to be under the cosh. And I don't think Cardiff should necessarily expect to come up against a Norwich team who've been so impressive for the most part this season and dominate them in the same way. As you mentioned, there are intangibles there around the playing staff and whether or not they want Rita to take over. I remember listening to an interview with him when he first took over the caretaker role, and he basically said that he believes in himself. This is what he wants to do. And he sees, and he wants to implement a new attacking style of football. It's always a bit of a leap into the unknown. And I think with Rita and caretakers generally, there is a perceived risk that you don't necessarily get with managers who are tried and tested, whatever tried and tested means. Tried and tested normally means they've done quite well somewhere, they've done quite badly elsewhere. It's getting to the point now for Cardiff City that if they want to build on what is happening at the club right now and invest in a manager who has seemingly got the whole place buzzing, it would be a dereliction of duty not to give him the job. Because albeit in games I'm sure Aaron Bullock would have loved to have had the opportunity to manage in, we have seen a massive uptick in terms of not only results but the way they're approaching games too.
Yeah, and it's not easy to go from the sort of football that Cardiff were playing and the squad that they have, which on paper I'd have said wouldn't be suited to a really attacking kind of gung-ho style. It's not easy to come in and just change that at the flick of a switch. It's easy to set up your team to play attacking football, to have the intent to play attacking football. It's another thing entirely, actually executing attacking patterns in the final third, creating chances because the players understand where to be, who to pass to at any given time, while also making sure that you're not completely open at the back. What he's been able to achieve in terms of changing the style is incredible. But he's also really clearly and quickly identified the players most suited to that style. And in some cases, these are not players that Errol Bullock was playing or was particularly interested in. And that's what I think is really impressive as well. So you can see the lineups for the last 4 games, very consistent. He's really landed on a general sort of core that he thinks can play this style, and they're proving that they can. He found a back 4 very quickly, which always seems quite important. Ng, Chambers, Gutas and O'Dowda, with Elek playing very well in goal this season as well. Elek not considered, I don't think, one of the strongest goalkeepers in the Championship, but his shot-stopping numbers really strong this season. And the 3 games before the weekend, they were unchanged completely. So we got that defence and goalkeeper, but he's just breathed new life into players in midfield and in attack. David Turnbull's come in from the cold completely to play central midfield role that would have felt pretty spicy for a guy that's known as being a really attack-minded player, and he's playing alongside Alex Robertson in the main, both of them playing really well. And then the front 4, which has mostly been Ollie Tanner off the right, Ruben Colwill, number 10, Anwar El Ghazi off the left, and Callum Robinson at the very top of the pitch. Now, Chris Willock did start over Robinson on the weekend, Robinson coming off the bench to score the equaliser. And basically, from a tactical point of view, what I find interesting is that on paper, it's being laid out as a 4-2-3-1, but it's basically a 4-2-4-0. This is essentially a strikerless formation. Even when Callum Robinson plays, the positions that he takes up are not of a focal point number 9 type at all until the very end of attacks. He drifts to the left, and they build up heavily down each side, and they pack each side with players to combine to play triangles to get up the pitch and get into positions to generate attacks. So down the left side, you normally got Callum Robinson, Anwar El Ghazi, Callum O'Dowda overlapping down the left-hand side, and Turnbull drifts out to that side as well. Whereas on the right side, you're getting Perry and G, then you're getting Ruben Colwill, who's been absolutely magnificent in the half spaces under Reza, and then Ollie Tanner, who's done really well as the right-sided attacking winger. They look to build in those wide areas, but again, that in itself isn't unusual or that impressive. There's still a lot of work to do to create chances and score goals from those positions. You just see the fluidity that they have in the last 20 yards or so is often ending with Callum Robinson having great chances to score, which he's doing really well. Look at his shot map. These are great shot locations. The shots that he's taking look like a number 9, even if outside of those actions, he's not playing anything like a fixed number 9. It's just really exciting, really impressive. They've gone from having the 4th fewest shots per game under Errol Bullock to the 3rd most in the league since Omar Reza took charge. And what he wants from his players is so different to the previous manager. It's more exciting for fans. It's much more interesting for the players, clearly. It's also leading to strong, competitive, energetic, inventive and lively performances. And it's so great to say that about Cardiff City, because they're not a team that we've enjoyed watching and covering, particularly over the last few years. And so we want to celebrate this. Well done, Omar Reza. We certainly think you should be getting the job full time. Thank you to FOTMob for allowing us to dig a little bit deeper under the hood and dig out some of the interesting bits of Cardiff's performances recently. Download the FOTMob app for all the stats and data for Championship, League One and League Two, but also the best live scores app on the market. Use the link in the show notes to download the app right now. On Sunday, we have Millwall 1, Burnley 0, a result that might have been a surprise, George, if you're a slave to the league table, but certainly not if you're a slave to the data.
Yeah, Millwall's underlying numbers have been pretty good all season, and they've now won 3 games in a row. Burnley's underlying numbers have been a pretty big concern all season, and this was the first game that they had lost for quite a long time, dating back to when they were beaten by Sunderland in the league back in August. But their games have been basically following the same pattern. I wrote a preview for AK Bets about this game on Saturday. Basically, every Burnley game is the same. Neither team creates loads. Burnley are defensively rock solid. From an attacking perspective, they are really struggling to create anything of note. And that means you're getting games with normally one of the teams scoring 0 or 1 and the other team scoring 0 or 1. And this is just the first time that one of those games has transpired where the opposition have taken their chance through Jake Cooper. And Burnley, who created very little, didn't score any of theirs. It's probably a blueprint for quite a lot of points with Burnley. Like, I think that because they won't concede many goals and they've got quite a lot of individual quality, they'll probably do okay. And I don't think that's necessarily a great thing for them, because I can't see them doing poorly enough for real questions to be asked to Scott Parker, when actually such a poor attacking output with this group of players, with Luca Goliosho on the right-hand side, with Josh Brownhill and Josh Cullen, 2 midfield players who were the heartbeat of one of the best attacking sides we saw under Vincent Kompany a couple of seasons ago, with Jayden Anthony, who should be a really good attacking force down the left-hand side. There's way too much attacking talent there for this team to consistently post such poor numbers and find it so difficult to break teams down, and yet that is the case. Millwall were fairly comfortable here. They went ahead just after half-time through Cooper, and they saw the game out without really much trouble whatsoever. Burnley's not even getting a shot on target. So Neil Harris's sticky start to the season under Millwall never really looked like it was going to be too much of an issue, and they 9 points from 3 has done them well. I'm pretty concerned for Burnley right now, despite the league position. I think that if they don't improve, as I say, I can't see them dropping off massively, but I don't think their attacking numbers and the way that they're, we talk about Leeds exerting complete control in games. That control includes being a consistent goal-scoring threat, and Burnley haven't been that for a long time. Like those 2 opening games of the season, where they won 4-1 and 5-0, we haven't seen anything. I mean, even...
Mate, they've scored more goals in those games than they have in the 11 games they've played it. They have the second lowest XG per 90 in the division. Millwall have the 3rd highest, so to my point last week, they are a genuinely good attacking team. Burnley are completely the opposite to that. You said I don't see them dropping off to the point where there'll be that many questions asked about Scott Parker. I feel strongly that if you are running a football club and you're in charge of evaluating managerial performance, you have to be using underlying numbers and data points to inform how you think that manager is doing. And you should be fair. You should set these in advance, your expectations. Of course, results are important, and I am certainly not naive enough to think that they aren't. But if you are mostly driven by results, and therefore, from a Burnley point of view, if you're just looking at the league table and going, well, it's not a bad start, is it, overall? You are missing the point. You are not analysing the team's performance properly, in my opinion, and you are therefore going to be liable for a shock, because things will catch you by surprise, and then you might be having to make knee-jerk decisions based on emotional outcomes, basically. And I don't think that is the best way to run a club. I think it is embarrassing for this team to have the 2nd lowest XG output in the division, and that is mitigated to an extent by some very impressive out-of-possession stuff. both their XG against numbers, but also what they're doing in terms of disrupting the opposition in their press, winning the ball high up. I really do think it reflects incredibly badly on Parker that the numbers are as they are. And there'll be plenty of people who think it doesn't matter, they're doing well, they'll probably improve. You know, I at this moment, I don't know if I'm sure they will definitely improve on an attacking sense. And if they don't, they're barely going to score any goals. And that's going to get pretty boring if it hasn't already. Stoke beat Derby 2-1. I think a fair result on balance, even if, or rather, although the winner was quite contentious, with Junior Chamado kind of boshing Nat Phillips out the way as he was about to clear a corner, which was eventually headed in by Ben Gibson.
Nat Phillips should have been sent off.
Nat Phillips should have been sent off. So there you go.
Not that you know, just to provide a bit of balance.
Yeah, for sure. But I think on balance of play, no real complaints. Paul Warne, as he so often does, wasn't that keen to focus on the refereeing decision. Was pretty clear that he didn't think his team deserved to pick up any points anyway. They were only level because of a comedy own goal where a punted ball forward. Ben Gibson goes to head it back to Victor Johansson, except Victor Johansson is not in his goal, and Ben Gibson heads it in. Cannon had put Stoke ahead in the first half, and they were the better side here. You know, Derby had a few opportunities. Johansson had to make a couple of saves, but Zetterstrom did as well. Narcís Pelac's second win as Stoke manager. I think what we're seeing so far, you know, aside from results, which clearly haven't been amazing, is just a really ambitious tactical approach, which I guess is one of the reasons why they'd have hired him. That's what they want from him. Obviously, it's not been perfect. Seems to leave them pretty open. I note that they have faced the most shots in the league since Pelak took charge, which has to improve. But I do think it's a way of playing that could feasibly have quite a high ceiling if it all clicks. Whether you believe it will or not, I think it's still too early to say. But, you know, having Wouterberger in the centre of the park with then two very attacking number 8s, or basically number 10s playing in front of him, and then two wide forwards and a striker is pretty exciting. I think they're a good watch for the neutral. Luton 1, West Brom 1, Hull 1, Portsmouth 1. I want to talk about the Hull game. So why don't you tell me a bit about Luton 1, West Brom 1. Pretty poor game in terms of quality.
Can we say it was a game that happened?
Pretty much.
You know, Baggies, I think, are really struggling to find their early season form right now. You know, they took the lead relatively early in this one, but never looked particularly free-flowing. Luton did what they were doing quite well at the moment, where they disrupted Baggies pretty well, but created some opportunities. But with, you know, West Brom being a generally pretty solid side, it took a moment, kind of the one moment of quality within the game, with Tahit Chong bursting down the left-hand channel and firing the ball across goal.
No, Josh Madger's nice back heel, not a moment of quality.
That was really nice.
2 moments of quality in the game.
2 moments of quality that lit up an otherwise poor game. So, yeah, it was a point that I think it's one of those weird points where both teams are probably quite happy with it, whilst also knowing that they need to get points fairly soon. I'm still of the opinion that Luton are playing much better than they were, and that the results will come, and I'm sure with Baggies as well, it won't be long before Corberan sorts it out, although for the first time we are seeing a few murmurs of discontent amongst the Baggies faithful around not changing it enough because they haven't won a game for a while.
It feels very Carlos Corberan that West Brom have drawn 5 games in a row. You know, they're quite boring and not playing very well, but they're also not losing any of these games 5 in a row. You know, they have an incredibly high floor, which isn't always a compliment. You know, in this sense, it basically means like when they're at their worst, they're still way better than most other teams are at their worst. But that ceiling, they do hit their head on the ceiling quite often as well, compared to a lot of the teams at the top of the league. And I think that's been a feature of Corberan's management. There's no doubt he's an exceptional manager, particularly out of possession, particularly just in terms of general match-to-match strategy, particularly tactical detail, particularly picking up points over 46-game season, which is what the game's all about. But, you know, I went through their FB ref from last season. I think 23 of their games, so half their league games, they generated 1.1 XG or less in most cases. So as an attacking team, like they've never been very good. His Huddersfield team as an attacking team weren't notably good. It's as a package that these teams are good overall. At the moment, it's not particularly exciting, but I still wouldn't say I'm particularly concerned about West Brom. Hull 1, Portsmouth 1 was crazy to me. I watched back the extended highlights thinking this was just going to be classic little 1-1 that I wouldn't have much to say on. I mean, almost the opposite. I've got a lot of thoughts. Well, let's talk about the game and the result first, because there's a lot of news here, basically. Hull started like a train, but like a fast train, like a high speed train.
It sounded like a train, but a fast train.
Yeah. They had a couple of really nice moves already and chances before João Pedro put them ahead with a brilliant move. Charlie Hughes involved in the build-up, Bellumi, who looks really great off the right wing, and then João Pedro tapping in. The move for that goal and for the big Xavi Simons chance not long after were beautiful, such fluid football. And then Hughes gave the ball away at the back for a big Callum Lang chance that wasn't taken. And it was like the belief just drained out of Hull completely. They conceded straight from kickoff in the second half, Murphy scoring for Pompey, and then Portsmouth clearly the better side from that point, despite Hull being the home side. There was good work from Lang in the build-up, more good work from him. He's playing really well at the moment. The game just flipped, and Portsmouth probably should have won. Yengi had a great headed chance that he botched. Panda made a brilliant double save, and there were boos at full time. Their third 1-1 draw in a row. Tim Walter was shaking his head and throwing his water bottle with frustration, either at the fans or the performance, or I think probably both. He had a weird post-match interview where he just didn't have his composure whatsoever, and it's just the sort of interview that makes it feel like he's already kind of careering out of control, and the fans aren't very happy. What I would say is, as a tactics fan, setting aside the result and the fact that the players completely failed to execute his instructions in the second half, what he's asking them to do is very interesting and very fun. Like, his defenders basically have a free role in possession. So the amount of times in that game yesterday where the keeper would have it and Hughes or Jones, who are the two centre-backs, would run into midfield was very, very notable. There's one point where Alfie Jones is basically on the right wing. Hughes is in a defensive midfield position. That's the two centre-backs. Louis Coyle, the right-back, is standing in the left-back zone. Cody Drammer is in the centre-back zone with one of the midfielders in the other centre-back zone. It clearly freaked Portsmouth's press in the first half. It quite clearly worked at that time, but they completely lost their confidence and then it all crumbled. So it doesn't really matter that much, but for any tactics fans, I would suggest watching a bit of Hull City at the moment because he's, we were told to expect heart attack football and it is incredibly lively, so fair play.
Palpitations.
QPR 0, Sunderland 0 was a match that happened. Job Bellingham with a straight red card for a bit of a lunge in midfield. Having played every minute of the campaign this season, he'll now have a bit of a rest. We had FA Cup first round action. As always, it's quite hard to do it all on the pod. We won't be doing much specific match analysis here. There were 40 ties. The story of FA Cup first and second round basically pits the EFL teams, the ones in our remit, as like the big dogs there to be shot at, the Goliaths, not the Davids. So it always feels a bit weird to kind of celebrate, for example, Kettering Town in the 7th tier beating Cobblers, but I think that is the story of the FA Cup first round. On a more general note, George, something we've talked about a lot over the weekends, the fact that replays have now been scrapped. There are no replays in the FA Cup, even in the first and second rounds, where clubs presumably would still want them. I don't think I'm speaking for everyone there, but I think the majority of clubs, League One, League Two, certainly a non-league, and the majority of fans as well, for whom tradition is very important and isn't something to be chucked away loosely, very disappointed about the fact that there haven't been any replays. I know you're one of them.
Yeah, I was pretty upset back in April when the plans were announced. And the events of Saturday only increased that because on Saturday we saw 5 games between non-league clubs and EFL clubs end in a draw. In 4 of those, the league club, the EFL club ended up going through either after extra time or off the penalties. So therefore you've got 5 replays that have been taken away from the non-league club. I think probably the most pertinent one was the Western-super-Mare, who managed to get a 1-1 draw away at Bristol Rovers in a local game where the reverse back at Western-super-Mare, which undoubtedly would have been shown on TV, would have had a transformative effect. It would have been a money-spinning tie for the non-league club. And who's to say... I tweeted about this on Saturday and I've had a couple of kind of chippy-ish replies about like, I'm sure Maidenhead are gutted that they don't get to go to Crawley again next week and play a replay. Who are we to know the impact that may have? Like, firstly, one of the key arguments from people who are in favour of scrapping replays was that going into extra time and penalties would give the non-league or the minnow a better chance of progressing. And I could kind of understand the theory behind that, whereas it became very clear on Saturday that probably isn't the case. And anecdotally, we've heard loads of stories from people at games saying the difference between a full-time professional football team and a part-time professional football team, between the minutes, like if you think of 0 to 90 is probably 100 minutes. So between 100 minutes and 140 minutes, or however long extra time is going to be, is incredibly obvious due to fitness levels. So actually, maybe it is more likely that Maidenhead would have, going to Crawley, being able to take them on over 90 minutes again, having held them to a 1-1 draw, would have a better chance of progressing anyway off the back of that. Not to mention, we have no idea what games would have been chosen for television and what that might have brought as well. There's also like a part of this, I as a fan, and I've spoken about this a lot on the pod, some of my favourite ever experiences going to live games have been cup games. And if you're a Southend United fan and you've watched your team go toe-to-toe, they were 2-0 down and 3-2 down against Charlton and come back twice to draw the game 3-3. Imagine leaving that stadium when you've just scored in the 93rd minute to make it 3-3, knowing that in 10 days' time you're going to be making the short journey to Charlton with all your mates for the first time in a long time, going to an EFL ground away from home and getting the reward of the basically the night out in order to go to Charlton and take them on again over 90 minutes. For a club that have A, been through a hell of a lot over the last few seasons, and B, would have travelled in massive numbers to Charlton, I've got no doubt about that. It's such a shame that this has happened, and the reason it's happened is seemingly, brazenly because of the increased European schedule. I have no doubt at all that the increase in the EFL trophy schedule, which I still think is an abomination to increase, if we are serious about player welfare and we're serious about the congested fixture calendar, why do we have a competition where realistically the sporting merit until the semi-finals is basically nil, taking up such a big proportion of our fixture list? It doesn't make any sense to be increasing the fixture load there 5 or 6 years ago and then decrease the FA Cup replays. When you also consider that the reason we've done this, again, because the increased European schedule, why has this happened in rounds 1 and 2, where there is absolutely zero impact of the increased European schedule on these leagues? It's such a big shame, and it's sad to see. I think for the most part, the reaction online has suggested that people are aggressively against it. I think the idea that in football you should only be rewarded for winning is also misguided, where if you are up against it and you're playing against a team of full-time athletes who are 3 or 4 divisions above you and you manage to hold them to a draw, that in itself is a result and you should be rewarded for that result. So, yeah, Kettering fans, I'm sure, are pretty happy that their game wasn't a replay because they were able to get through, but that does not mean that the whole notion of the reward for getting a draw and the results that come with that, whether it's the financial implications or just the reward for fans and players to be able to pit their wits against them again, it's sad, and sadly it's going to be here to stay, but I won't stop banging the drum.
Yeah, just to pick up on it's going to be here to stay, because I don't think that decision is going to be reversed, even though I agree with what you say. I guess from that point, the two things that I was thinking about as, well, what could we do to make it better from this point of view, or from this position rather? One of them, which might be a little idealistic and might logistically be unfeasible, is what if the clubs before the game itself were able to choose what happens in the event of a draw after 90 minutes? Therefore,
what if they disagree?
Well, then you probably wouldn't have a replay.
Well, that's it then, because I think it was interesting getting I conversed, obviously very amicably, with one Gillingham fan and one Reading fan, who are both basically as a fan of an EFL club, it's always quite nice going to a game knowing you're not going to have to go to Port Vale the week after or whatever. It shifts where if you're a Gillingham fan home to Blackpool on Saturday, I can completely understand why you are quite happy sitting there knowing that a draw means you don't have to go to Blackpool in 10 days at the drop of a hat. However, if you're hosting Liverpool in a couple of weeks' time, then you're going to be feeling very differently about when you're sitting there. So the goalposts move, and
you can't just have it where if I'm excited by it, it's good, but if I'm not excited by it, it's bad.
Exactly.
Also, you don't have to go to Blackpool if you don't want to.
No. So
but some people would want to go. But that's because they like going to all games.
But that's why we're in it's an interesting predicament where if you're basically a League One or a League Two side, you can be both the David and the Goliath in the FA Cup, which is fairly rare. But
My second thing was gonna
in
be-
football, which is like, it's everything is so catered for the elite, and like if there's one thing that's going to pinpoint that to such an alarming degree, it is a tournament, a competition in the history of the FA Cup being changed before those clubs are even in the draw in order to suit them. Like that, in my mind, as like just a one snapshot into English football sums up why it's so important not just to roll over and say, yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but what are you going to do?
Okay, last thing on this. What if, given what you said about minutes, I love how you decided to complicate things by saying minutes 100 to 140 rather than 91 to 120.
Well, because we're talking
I
about player
love
welfare.
that. I love that you've done that because you're completely right to.
Cool.
What if we just go straight to pens?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. More,
way better.
Yeah.
Well, because also, then I guess you are, if you're the minnow, then you are basically being handed as close to a coin toss as possible to progress after 90 minutes. But you're still then scrapping the opportunity for TV money, which could revolutionise a football club.
Yeah.
And, if you think it's wrong that the luck of the draw can have such a seismic impact on non-league sides, then your issues with football are bigger, therefore, than just having an issue with FA Cup replays.
Lots happened in the Cup. There's some sort of EFL news that came from a Cup game. That is that Shrewsbury, having lost to Salford 2-1, sacked Paul Hurst on Sunday. Paul Hurst's return to Shrews has not been highly successful, albeit they didn't go down last season after he stepped in post Matty Taylor. It is still, over the course of his 32 league games since joining in January, 6 wins, 8 draws and 18 defeats, 26 points from 32 games. And clearly they've given themselves a really tough task of staying in the division with 2 wins, 2 draws and 10 defeats, 8 points from their 14 league games so far this season. The chairman released a pretty lengthy statement. There was a lot of please can you remember all the things that I've done for the club in my long tenure, my long reign, which some fans have taken as, him kind of protesting, and some fans have gone actually, fair play, we are pretty angry with the current situation. But when you zoom out, it has been a really good and relatively stable period for the club over a long period of time. It doesn't feel like that right now. He also made the point that while we've maintained a budget that's affordable for our revenue as a club, the external landscape of League One finances have changed immeasurably, which is why I'm more determined than ever to find succession. He said, I want to reiterate, we are in advanced negotiations to secure my succession with a party who I believe would be the very best for this football club. So the context of Shrewsbury and Paul Hurst and looking for a new manager, it's not just about this season. It's not just about their poor points return and their poor performance. It's a much wider thing about this club and its ability to sustain itself as a League One club with the current ownership. I have some sympathy for any owner who basically is trying to operate a football club with limited resources, limited organic revenues from the fan base for the size of the club, and without being able to put in a lot more of their own money. When there are so many clubs who are able to do that in the same division, of course it makes it very, very difficult. What I would say is that while budgets and money are a huge driver for how teams do in the English pyramid, the strongest driver, of course it is, you can still operate a football club in a way that is smart on the football side, and you can punch above your weight by being smart on the football side. And I don't think Shrewsbury have been that for a good few seasons now. It's been a bit of a shambles basically since April 2023. The end of the 22-23 season, where they actually finished 12th under Steve Cotterill, was terrible. Cotterill left in the summer. Mickey Moore came in as director of football. Things haven't improved at all under Mickey Moore and since he's been in running the football side of the club. And there's just very little squad quality. The recruitment's been poor over a few years. You can do better than this if you are smarter than this, would be my overall point. And I don't think they've given themselves much of a chance, because I don't think they have been particularly smart in how they've operated, even if I do have sympathy for the budgetary situation. And so it's an interesting position. Or it's not an interesting position. It's a tough position. Very little positive energy in the club at all. Chairman seems keen to move it on. Fans haven't got much to cling on to. the team have scored 53 goals in their last 70 league games. That's not a team that you enjoy going to watch. And it's a hard job for someone to come into. There's loads of games left, so loads of points to play for. But just to stay up, they'll have to do a 10 out of 10 job. Yeah. How likely is that?
I know. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's not a particularly appealing job on paper. It's kind of similar to, as we were talking about, the Burton Albion job. Like, do you want to be coming into a role in November where, despite such a poor start, you're still going to be judged on whether or not you can keep a club up or not? It's unfair, but my assumption is that if someone comes in, unless they do a job like Darryl Clark last season at Cheltenham, where they bring you incredibly close but just fail, some of the responsibility will still be put at their door. When realistically, Shrewsbury are quite clearly a side who, in terms of squad quality, in terms of investment, look to be a bottom 4 League One side. So, and it was interesting also to note that a lot of the fan reactions seemed to echo that and be like, well, okay, Hurst has gone, but is he the issue? Like, it doesn't feel like it.
Is gravity the issue?
Yeah, I think the English football pyramid is the issue for Shrewsbury Town, where it's going to take someone doing an almighty job to keep them up. Steve Cotterill, to my mind, was blessed with the ability to bring in players such as Tom Bayliss, such as Jordan Shipley, that I think Shrewsbury Town couldn't have dreamt of bringing in the summer. There's been a decline in basically every aspect of the football club over the last couple of years. So, they are obviously able to go out and recruit. We've seen it before where managers can take over and transform things very quickly. Clark being an example of that, even though that ended in relegation. Looking at the bookmakers' lists, you've got Dino Mamria, who's done a similar job to that before, right at the top of it. Gareth Ainsworth, who, he's the kind of person where if he can get something to click and get everyone buying into what he brings and the positivity around his cult of personality, maybe they could do it, because there are a few other bad teams down there. But it's not a job I'd be rushing to take. Although, if I was offered it, I'd probably take it.
I was going to say, hey, you've been trying to get into the management game for ages. Beggars don't have a choice. Choosers. That's a quote, by the way.
Beggars don't have a choosers.
I haven't botched that phrase.
Okay, fine.
That is a quote from, I think, Gavin and Stacey.
Okay.
And I knew you were going to pick me up on it, and actually you're the idiot, not me.
Thank you.
In this instance.
Fine.
A couple of FA Cup first round notables. Jump in if you've anything to add. I did 5 Live on Saturday lunchtime, so I was quite across a lot of the non-league stuff. Kettering's win at Cobblers was great fun. I was calling this one the Sean Dyche Derby because he's famously born in Kettering, but played for Northampton, and his son is on the books at Northampton, albeit out on loan at the moment. No one else is calling it that. Nile Ranger scored the winner. That's just fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nile Ranger scored the winner for Kettering, who are in the 7th tier, at Cobblers in the 3rd tier. Tamworth beat Huddersfield as well. Also pretty fun that their guy with the long throw is called Tom Tonks. Sounds like a Roald Dahl character, but actually Tamworth's Cup hero. Cousin Chris Maxwell, very much the villain, because as everyone was very keen to point out, because they know the laws of the game, if he had just let the throw go in the goal, it would have been a goal kick. But instead, it was a weak flap, and it ended up as a Maxwell own goal. A big own goal for the whole family. Dag Red and Wealdstone, they beat Crewe and Grimsby, League 2 opposition away from home, which is a fantastic achievement. I love that Walsall beat Bolton, and Dennis Jellis scored the winner in injury time. Because Walsall, quite aside from the fact they're running at 2 points per game in League 2, with the performance data to back it up and some, in the Cups this season, in the League Cup, they beat Exeter on penalties from the league above. They beat Huddersfield from the league above 3-2. They drew with Leicester of the Premier League before losing on pens. In the trophy, they've drawn with Birmingham and won on pens. They've beaten Fulham under 21s, and now they've beaten Bolton from the league above. So unbeaten in 90 minutes in cup competitions this season. I'm going to say it, I think Walsall are my favourite team in the EFL right now.
Nice.
I just think that everything that is happening and has happened is just fantastic. I just talked about Shrewsbury and basically how you can still be a good football team even if you don't have the biggest budget. I think what Walsall are doing is one of the best examples of that in League 1 and League 2 right now. Elsewhere, Harrogate knocked out Wrexham to the dismay of the TV broadcasters. Jack Muldoon with the winner. Harrogate seemed to step up quite well in games against kind of bigger dogs this season. They've beaten Bradford, they've beaten Donny, they've beaten Wrexham. It's the week-to-week performances they need to kind of keep their eye on, but fair play to them. Salford beating Shrews, as mentioned, to continue their good run. Cheltenham beat Rotherham. And I tell you, that tactical switch that I mentioned last week, it's working for Cheltenham. Ethan Archer scored a really nice solo goal in that game. Rotherham fan Will saying an attendance at Rotherham of 2,770 for this game, which about sums up where we're at the moment. People are disenchanted, says Will. They play Barnsley on Friday. Tranmere lost to Oldham with former Tranmere heroes Mickey Mellon and James Norwood at the forefront. Mellon in the dugout, Norwood on the score sheet. Similarly there, Tranmere fans, basically a lot of the ones that I've seen saying Adkins has got to go. Not happy times there. Wimbledon won at Milton Keynes, which looked like a hell of a day out for the Dons fans. And Harborough and Gainsborough picked up great wins as well. Harborough Town and Gainsborough Trinity. Last but not least, Miles Leaburn is back for Charlton. He scored 2 in the trophy in midweek. Like, watch the goals that he has scored since he come back from injury. He scored 2 goals against one of the under-21s teams, where he looks like a 35-year-old, like, heavyweight wrestler.
Sure wasn't Carl.
Yeah, it looks like Carl Leaburn playing against school kids. And then he scored against Southend with a towering back post header, like a proper Carl Leaburn header. But he's 20. So he's still eligible to play in under-21s teams. So he shouldn't be looking like a 35-year-old 90s striker. Like, I can't tell you how excited I am about Leaburn being fit. I can't tell you how bullish I am on what a prospect he is. And I can't tell you how excited I am to talk about Miles Leaburn goals on Monday pods in the next few weeks and months. Second round, my favourite picks for the draw: Burton Tamworth, nice local derby for the giant killers of Tamworth, and you have to say every chance of another giant to be killed. Oldham, they go to Orient, which will be quite spicy. Richie Wellens, former Oldham manager, of course. Dag and Red go to Wimbledon. Brackley are at Stockport. Wealdstone host Wickham. Kettering at home to Donny. Harborough Town get to go to Reading. I saw quite a few people saying that seemed like an underwhelming draw for Harborough Town. But there's only League One and League Two teams left for them to play. And Reading have been in the Premier League in the last decade or so. I think that's a pretty big achievement and away trip for the Harborough Town fans. And Gainsborough are at Harrogate, something of a Yorkshire derby, I think. My geography's not the best. Thanks very much for listening. It's been good fun to talk you through something a bit different this week. Bit of extra time on the champ, bit of extra depth, and then a bit of FA Cup fun as well. Be back again for the betting show on Thursday after what was a pretty fun week on that front last time out. So thank you for listening and go very well.